California's a pretty crazy state. I love so many things about it, and so many things about it drive me crazy. This story is about one of the crazier things they've done lately, because they just tried to introduce a bill to combat the evil of fake news. This is what legislators in California are doing with their time. They introduced AB 1104, a bill that is all about censorship, really, in a crazy way. The bill they wanted to turn into law actually read, "It is unlawful for a person to knowingly and willingly make, publish, or circulate on an internet website, or cause to be made, published, or circulated in any writing posted on an internet website, a false or deceptive statement designed to influence the vote on either of the following: any issue submitted to voters at an election, and any candidate for election to public office." In other words, California legislators wanted to make it illegal to be wrong on the internet, or even just deceptive, a term with a lot of wiggle room for interpretation and opinion. Let that sink in. California wanted to make it illegal to post stuff on the internet that someone else would deem inaccurate about politicians. They didn't specify who would be deeming the information as wrong either. How insane is that? That is some serious Orwellian level of crazy right there.
Facebook, Mozilla, and Craigslist founder Craig Newmark are part of a consortium of tech leaders, academics, and nonprofits committing $14 million into the creation of the News Integrity Initiative. The consortium was jointly announced on Monday. The SUNY Graduate School of Journalism will administer the initiative. The school will spearhead new literacy and aim to increase trust in journalism around the world. During last year's U.S. presidential election, the issue of fake news was highlighted as being a significant problem. Facebook's platform in particular was called out for allowing people to easily spread false news stories.
A Mexican newspaper has printed its final edition after one of its journalists was shot and killed outside her home. The front page of El Norte de Ciudad Juarez read "Adios" on Sunday, April 2nd. According to a translation by the Associated Press, owner Oscar Cantu Murguia wrote that he's closing up shop because, quote, "among other things, there are neither the guarantees nor the security to exercise critical, counterbalanced journalism." Chihuahua City correspondent Miroslava Breach-Vildusea was reportedly shot 8 times while sitting in her car on March 23rd. A child in the vehicle was unharmed. Meanwhile, a note left by Breach-Vildusea's body read, quote, "for being a loudmouth." Her beat was crime and corruption. The Committee to Protect Journalists says dozens of journalists have been killed in Mexico since 1992. Sunday marked the last print edition of El Norte. The online edition will soon follow.
According to Allure.com, acne specialist Joshua Zeichner says the incidence of adult female acne is increasing every year. Zeichner is the Director of Cosmetic and Clinical Research in Dermatology at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, and reportedly there are plans in the works for creating an acne vaccine. In the April issue of Allure magazine, it's been reported that nearly 50 million Americans are diagnosed with acne every year, estimated to be more than the entire population of Australia and Canada.
This pill is called Mucojet, and researchers have proven that it can deliver vaccine-type drugs that would normally need to be administered with an injection. The capsule is inserted into the mouth against the cheek, where it releases a jet stream of drugs, using the same basic principles of an elementary school volcano science project. Mix different substances together to produce a chemical reaction that creates pressure and erupts.
When the pressure builds up high enough and it breaks the membrane on the nozzle, then we get this jet.
Your drug is now being ejected out of the pill at a super high velocity, and it's coming out at a velocity that's high enough to gently permeabilize the epithelial cells and also go through the mucus. And so it's this very mild permeabilization that we're doing that essentially gets the protein across these 1 or 2 barriers that it needs to.
The research is still in its early stages. Mucojet was able to deliver vaccine-type drugs effectively in rabbits, but more research is needed to see if the tech is as effective in larger mammals and eventually humans. But if it worked, it could completely change the way vaccines and some other drugs are delivered.
It would be great to be able to have better distribution of vaccines, so you don't need nurses, especially when you're talking in rural areas. Also for parents who are worried about getting too many vaccines at one time, this would allow you to actually space out vaccines because you could do it at home. You don't have to do it at the doctor.
The technology can prove a game changer during a health crisis when large groups of people need to be treated quickly. The scientists are also working on a version of Mucojet that is swallowed and programmed to release drugs in the intestinal tract. This, they say, could one day lead to drugs like insulin being administered without an injection as well.
Botswana has been rocked by what appears to be its strongest ever earthquake, just hours after South Africa was also struck. This afternoon's earthquake has measured 6.8 on the Richter scale, a rare strong quake for Africa. Luckily, the quake's epicenter struck an area with few inhabitants. Users took to the earthquake report website to express their shock and describe their experience. One, writing from the city of Letterhakane, said, "We felt the house was vibrating, all the window and door panels shaking heavily. We went outside and felt the same." Quakes of this size are rare in Botswana, with geological experts saying it could be historically large. Last Quake said, "Earthquakes in Botswana are pretty rare. Nothing comparable in our catalog over the last decades."
Well, it's going to be another rough night in the south. Severe storms, including tornadoes that killed at least 4 people in the past 2 days, are now moving east, tearing a path of destruction from the Florida Panhandle to the Carolinas.
There it is, tornado.
Over the last 36 hours, 29 tornadoes have been reported across the Deep South, killing a mother and daughter in a mobile home in South Louisiana. 9 inches of rain sparked flash flooding in Alexandria, Louisiana, nearly shattering a 70-year record. In Luverne, Alabama this afternoon, families consoled one another after extreme weather uprooted trees and leveled homes. In Florence, Mississippi, 52-year-old Jacqueline Williams was trapped in her car after it slid into a creek.
We got a female stranded. She can't get out of her vehicle. She cannot swim.
She's drowning and she's gargling.
She could hear sirens, police say, and was trying to guide a 911 dispatcher to her location when she drowned.
Words don't describe it.
Florence Police Chief Richard Thomas.
They're real good people. Kids are good people. I hate that it happened.
Most of the deaths from these storms in the south happened in mobile homes, and I want to show you why experts say it is the last place you want to be in a tornado. Here in Luverne, Alabama, this patch of dirt is where a mobile home stood for 3 years until this morning. And eyewitnesses say a tornado flipped it and rolled it probably 80 feet. Scott, there was a mother and her 2 young kids who were inside. They crawled out with no injuries.
We are also on the scene of a disaster in South America. You're about to see the grim aftermath of devastating flooding and mudslides. And take a look at this tonight. This is the list of the dead and the missing. So many of them children.
High above the disaster zone, you can see all of the damage, but down on the ground, you can feel the pain. This is where the dead, more than 260, are waiting to be identified.
As you enter Makoa, this is one of the grim signs you first see. This is outside the cemetery. You can see them bringing in one of the bodies. And then these are all people who lived in Makoa. They're trying to identify some of the bodies that are here.
These catastrophic images still fresh in the minds of those who survived. A wall of water, mud, and debris crashed into the town in the middle of the night. So powerful, it pushed cars on top of trees. And more than 60 children dying when this avalanche of death came rolling in. We met Octavio Cardone inside the town's hospital. Every inch of his body scratched, bruised, or broken. But his story is even more painful. He tells me how he lost his grip on his 9-year-old daughter when the wall of water hit. She and his wife among the hundreds still missing. His 6-year-old son dying in the disaster.
And David, that father we met in the hospital who likely lost his entire family is now begging that the city set up some type of warning system so this never happens again.
The Sun didn't get the memo about April Fool's Day. because the eruptions it hurled into space starting April 1st were no joke. The flares were followed soon after by a pair of small asteroids making close passes by Earth, all adding up to some lively space weather you probably didn't even notice. 2 medium-sized solar flares were thrown off the same sunspot, one on Saturday and an even bigger one on Sunday. A number of coronal mass ejections, much larger, slower-moving, and shorter explosions of a hot material called plasma, were also thrown off. In addition to these explosions, we also had 2 asteroids buzz by, one closer than the moon, and the other just a little further away.
It's hard to see here, but a little girl's actions went far beyond her size. Barely able to fit in the chair, 3-year-old Lillian decided to join a police officer for dinner. The adorable moment was captured on the restaurant surveillance camera. Sergeant Stephen Deere says Lillian sat down with him while he was waiting for his food at a Panera Bread. Her parents watched from a table nearby as the two chatted and took this photo when they were finished. The interaction may not have been long, but the moment was sweet enough to last a lifetime.